Once every 9.6 minutes, we mine this quantity of silver. At 6.8 minutes intervals, we utilize this quantity of silver. The outcome will be positive. It takes 9.6 minutes to mine, so we're using up 6.8 minutes of it. At some point, this will slow down to reflect the price, which is the one thing that must give. Alternately, we need extremely high prices to spark a silver rush of miners, who will then open new mines if enough of them are willing to go out at these. For the first time since 1996, foreign central banks formally own more gold than U.S. treasuries, as pointed out by Tavi Costa. Relax and take it all in. You need only recall the events of the 1970s to see that this purchasing run is not going to last. It seems like the world is starting to rebalance itself in a way that no one has seen in recent memory. Tavi is essential, and you should remove the word recent from the sentence. For all of human history. Another update on gold. This is a fantastic chart that Ryan Dietrich demonstrates. In 2025, gold has its best year since 1979 with a 40% increase. However, the most important thing to note is that this represents 40.3%. Here we have 37%, so it's quite close if you look across here. Later on, though, in 1979, 1974, 1973, and 72, we saw the beginning of the bull market. Just Western Europe and Canada were included in this. Owning or trading gold remained a crime in the US. This is indeed an impressive performance. However, this portends that even better things are on the horizon. We haven't even begun yet. My friend James Anderson and I were co-workers for a long time. James began his career at goldsilver.com aeons ago. A third of the fund managers polled are completely out of money. It's 39.
It appears to have been around 41 or 42. I'm 39 years old. In other words, these fund managers, and this is my favorite part, do not know anything about money and have absolutely no gold on hand. Since they aren't making a financial transaction, they don't. Everything is valued in monetary terms to them, and they are invested in all of it. Thus, of the 39%, 20% have 4% gold exposure, 16% have 2%, 8% have 6%, and 6% have 8% or more. A mere 6% have 8% or higher. The day will come when at least 10% of them will be exposed. I promise you that. During the bull market of the 1970s, brokers, money managers, and fund managers, I'm not sure if they had these funds at the time, did not advise their clients to invest in gold. They began suggesting, investing 20%, 25%, 30% in gold just after it was too late. Additionally, that eventually decreased to, barely 10%. They start advising against investing in gold in the year 2000, when its price was around $250 per ounce, citing safety concerns. Loss is possible. Plus, it's because they are trying to sell you something. Then there's the myth that says you should only invest 10% in gold due to the fact that it's so risky and unpredictable. It has, aside from cryptocurrencies, been the best performing asset of this century, from 0 to 1. Nevertheless, there is an endless loop. According to the great bar chart that was constructed, gold reached its most overbought level on the monthly chart in 45 years. Now I noticed that when I tried to make a copy of this chart, it returns to 79. I dug a bit deeper and uncovered something fascinating. To begin with, it is not as overbought on the MACD that I could produce if you retrace your steps, not to mention that it is in a very overpriced state. Check out the beginning of the bull market though. Okay, I'm going to focus a bit more on this now. A bull market in the 1970s and 1980s. So, compared to 1980, we have not yet become overbought. Therefore, a month of sideways movement would be beneficial for gold, as it would help to unload this overbought situation. Having said that, during a currency crisis, it makes absolutely no difference. Overbought conditions will persist in the gold market as prices continue to rise. Furthermore, it is irrelevant to the matter at hand. It is irrelevant. All of the 70s bull market is here. The pricing is being driven solely by Western Europe and Canada. Owning gold was a crime in the United States. Owning gold for Americans was banned for Australians until 1975, and for Australians it was illegal until 1976. However, it began to reign on day 1 of 75. Why? Probably two things are at play here. One explanation is because Roosevelt did not seize the gold that he seized in 1933. Because bullion has such pitiful profit margins, if you hear that word, it's usually a salesperson trying to sell you an expensive collector coin instead. In spite of this, according to Roosevelt's executive order, a whopping 73% of the gold coins in circulation were not surrendered to a member branch of the Federal Reserve System. Therefore, they stayed in private hands, hidden from prying eyes, because they were useless. They wouldn't sell. For half a century, people hoarded those coins. This means that they have been passed down through generations, perhaps even from grandfather to great-grandson. However, after being held for half a century, their price per ounce increased to $35. The price of gold doubled, from $35 to slightly under $200 per ounce. So, the long-hidden treasure of gold that had lain dormant in safes, shoeboxes, and under mattresses is finally released onto the market. And at $103, it starts to drop. At the same time, in 1974, the stock market crashed. In 75, it began to emerge from it. That means stocks are doing better than gold. By September of 1976, though, it had reversed course and was trading at $873 intraday and $850 at the close. The Dow Jones Industrial Average happened to be at 873 points simultaneously. Accordingly, the Dow is worth 1 ounce of gold. That concludes our look at the 1970s bull market. Zooming out to the 1976 low of $103 reveals that gold swung around $400. After passing it, it came to a halt and continued in a sideways direction. Finally, November and October came to a close. And then it took off once more in early December. Therefore, it recovered from some of that overbought situation throughout this time, just to be overbought again. There it was, this same spot. But after it topped out at that earlier peak, it was full steam ahead. Also, the number of trade days I'm forgetting. On Christmas and New Year's, it will be closed, going from $425 to $850, on the verge of doubling in a matter of trading days, is rather remarkable. I wanted to remind everyone that the New Orleans Investment Conference will be happening, but I have no idea who will be the keynote speaker or special guest this year. But have a look at it. Ayn Rand and Milton Friedman. These other individuals are held in the highest regard. To let us know that you arrived here via my videos and everything, please use neworleansconference.com/Maloney. Those who join up as a result will also have my best effort at accommodating their schedules. The dates are November 2nd to 5th. This quantity of silver is mined every 9.6 minutes, according to Make Gold Great. At 6.8 minutes intervals, we utilize this quantity of silver. The outcome will be positive. This 6.8 minutes has been used up. We go through as much as it takes to mine for 9.6 minutes. Eventually, this will slow down to meet the price, which means something has to give. On the other hand, there are enough of them to warrant sending out miners. For there to be a silver rush and the opening of new mines, we require extremely high prices. Thus, this is essential for our meeting at this very moment. The problem is that silver will have a lot of uses once its prices skyrocket. The industrial applications will be extremely frugal. Consequently, we may be able to deplete this quantity of silver every 9.6 minutes rather than 6.8 minutes. What the heck? However, in the end, these things will have to work together, and the way they do so will be determined by the price. Tavi Costa notes that central banks in other countries. Greetings, this is Mike. This is a brief message. Although I'd like to extend a warm welcome to all of the new viewers of our films, I feel compelled to mention that only about 15% of you have really subscribed and enabled notifications. Be careful to enable notifications if you do not want to miss any developments as we enter some stormy times. The thumbs up is always appreciated, and I thank you for that. And finally, for more than 20 years, goldsilver.com has been a premier source for high-quality instructional materials. It would be our privilege to serve as your precious metals dealer if you are interested in supporting our goal. Please return to the video immediately. According to Tavi Costa, this is the first time since 1996 when the official holdings of gold by foreign central banks exceed those of US treasuries. But compare the percentage of gold held by foreign central banks in the 1970s and 1980s to the current situation. There will be a very steep upslope on this side of the curve due to the accumulation you are seeing with foreign central banks and the distrust in the currency. This will persist. So, give that some thought. You need only recall the events of the 1970s to see that this purchasing run is not going to last. It seems like the world is starting to rebalance itself in a way that no one has seen in recent memory. Tavi is essential, and you should remove the word recent from the sentence for all of human history. After World War I, we shifted from fully supporting the currency with gold to using 40% gold when we established the Federal Reserve. Then, in 1921, during the Genoa Conference, the international monetary system underwent a change. They had a solid foundation, but after Nixon removed us from the Bretton Woods system in 1971, our reserves plummeted from 8% under the previous system to nothing. And now, in one enormous leap, we will return from naught to something. Without a doubt, it will be the most monumental event in the history of money. Therefore, I believe a monumental event is on the horizon. These are times that are filled with excitement. History repeats itself, Mr. Yuppie. At 15%, gold reserves are at an all-time high and have not been seen in 30 years. This side, as I mentioned before, will have an extremely steep ascent. Do you know what I enjoy purchasing? In what ways do I invest personally? I invested in a product called InstaVault, which allows you to store gold in a vault at Brinks that is protected by armed guards. When you purchase an interest in 1,000-ounce bars of gold or silver from us, we are able to offer you the lowest possible price, which is very near to spot. Coins of the American Silver Eagle, 1 ounce in weight, are my preference. My silver holdings are primarily concentrated in silver eagles. Gold eagles are one of my favorite birds. Gold bars are nice. I have a number of 100-ounce silver bars. I apologize, in my possession. These mint containers contain my largest holding, silver eagles. However, I do have a fair number of these. I really like these products. The straps should remain attached. Keep them closed. The mint from which they originate has sealed them. Those rocks are mine to keep as pets. On his way to the bank, Carlo couldn't help but giggle. This is clearly not a component of the financial system, so I can laugh all the way to the edge of my seat. We provide storage at the edge of the cliff. A pet rock is gold, according to Warren Buffett. You excavate it in one spot, then hide it in another, a different kind of vault. For that reason, I appreciate you tuning in. Until then, take care.